How many of you like the detective crime shows and stuff where you gotta do the evidence and things like Criminal Minds? Fans of Criminal Minds? How about Law and Order, like Special Victims Unit? Luther? Yeah, okay, all right. Good, enthusiastic yes right there. I am too. I'm a fan of those, but the best one, the most dramatic, and where they actually, do good crime investigations and stuff like that. It's my favorite. Brooklyn Nine-Nine. Super good, intense, dramatic stuff going on in that one. How many of you watch a movie, and when you're watching the movie, one of the things you're constantly doing when you're in the movie theater is you're trying to figure out, who the bad guy is or who's doing this or what did that. Anybody see Mission Impossible recently? Right? Did you figure it all out? No, you didn't. Couldn't have figured it all out. There was some good stuff in that movie. So you do that. You like to do that. And that's a little bit of what we're going to be doing during this series. We're going to do 6 weeks of talks where I'm going to invite you to do some investigating, to think about some new ideas, to approach subjects with an open mind and an open heart, and to investigate some of the claims of Christianity. So during this series, we're going to discuss some of the big ideas around Christianity and around our faith. The title of this series comes from the idea that for the Jesus follower, for the Christian, God is the solution. He's the answer. We believe that. But for a skeptic or an atheist or an agnostic or somebody else, God is the problem. And so that's what we're going to look at, is the problems with God. And we're going to cover some of those in this series. And I know that even here in this service and our other two services, not everybody that comes here is a follower of Christ. Somebody may be an atheist, somebody may be agnostic or a part of a different religion, or you may be here just spiritual or just kind of investigating the claims. Maybe you heard about this series and somebody invited you and you're like checking this thing out. Whatever it is, or whatever reason you find yourself here, I want you to know I'm super glad that you are here. A lot of what we do around here is to create a place where you can belong even before you believe. And so super glad that you're here today. So we're going to be looking again at 6 big questions that have to do with the problem of God. And we're probably going to push against some of your paradigms and maybe presuppositions on how we think about God and his existence and these other subjects throughout these series. And what I'm asking us to do from the onset is this, just to have a posture that's open. Just to have a posture that's open. In fact, if you have your outline, pull that up right now, or you can go to it on your app. The invitation of this series is this: will you follow where the evidence leads, not where you hope it leads? Will you follow where the evidence leads, not where you hope it leads? So this invitation is for all of us. It's for a believer and unbeliever. So it's not like if you're a believer here today, you're saying, yeah, go get him, Pastor Mark. Get that skeptic. You tell him. This is for all of us. Because I've been around a while. I know that it's not just important to know what you believe, it's important to know why you believe it. And there have been plenty of people I've known in the Christian realm, in the Christian faith, who could not tell you why they believe something that they believe. And therefore they steer away from having a really open and honest dialogue with other people about these subjects. So I want us all, whether a believer or unbeliever, just to be open to having our thoughts challenged and to look at God and look at some of our claims in a new light. Here's the reason this is important. I believe that many people approach the subject of God with the intent to defend their positions, defend their opinions, as opposed to following the evidence. And so we want to approach something. How many of you have done that? You went into a class, you heard a lecture, you did something, and you already had formatted your opinion on something through life or whatever. And so you went in there just to see if you agreed or didn't agree, and not to learn and to be open. So I want us to be open. I have some friends. In fact, this book that I love, I'm going to be talking about a little bit. The author here, he talks about himself in his childhood of being a real skeptic. I know a lot of people do. It sounds so much more manly to say, I was an evidence guy. Like, you have to show me and make me believe. I wasn't that kid. I was thinking about it this week. I really wanted to say I was that kid that had that kind of will. I wasn't. I was like super gullible. If mom said, sitting that close to the TV was going to make you blind, I believed her. I just believed her. My dad, I'm not kidding. This is the kid I was. And I was young, granted, but my dad told me that he played poker on Friday nights with Superman, Batman, and Aquaman. And I believed him. I called him up last year on it, though. No, I believed him. I tell about the time that Santa Claus got debunked. I remember a time we were driving by through the huge metropolis of Lodi, California, up north about 5-6 hours, and it was a small community. This was like 40 plus years ago. And going through there, and all of a sudden, he says, "Hey, Mark, amazing little fact. Don't know if you know this, I'm sure you don't, but amazing fact, Elvis grew up in that house right there." And I was like, whoa. There was never a thought in me that he's messing with me. I thought Elvis grew up in Lodi in that particular house until years later when I watched something on TV that said he was like born in Mississippi and then moved to Nashville. And I'm like, how did they get that wrong? He was in Lodi. So many. I thought Pocahontas was my ancestor for years. I'm not joking. That until probably about 10 years ago. I thought that one. When I realized all these lies, and my mom, I was like, she didn't want to be labeled as being a part of the lie game with me and me growing up. So when I asked her, I said, okay, what about Pocahontas? Is she really not my ancestor? And my mom was like, but she could be. So I had this. If I was at school and a kid said that for vacation, he went and skied the Alps, I was like, cool, that must have been fun. No thought that he would be lying. I had a friend who said that his dad was a spy for the CIA. I'm like, totally cool. I mean, my plays poker with Superman, so I get the CIA thing, Anyways, I was just a very gullible kid, and I really believed what people told me. But then, at about 20 years old, right in my very early 20s, probably right around 20 years old, something clicked in me, and it's like I woke up for the first time. My brain just turned on. I don't know how to describe it, but it was like at 20 years old or so, my brain just went click, wake up, and did this. And I became very suspect at that point of people, which wasn't really a good, pivot there just to become suspect of everybody. But I was suspect of politics. I became thinking about social norms, and I began to read. And during this time, there was a season where I tried very hard to be an atheist because God was handed to me as a child, and I took it for granted, and I thought, whoa. And I became suspect of a lot of things that I believed in life and stuff like that. And I really thought, no, I'm not going to just believe in God. And I tried to be an atheist and get rid of this. Obviously, that didn't work for me, right? And there's two reasons why that didn't work for me, even though legitimately I really did try to do that. One reason is this. I didn't know how to deny what I really believed. I kept saying the words or acting like I didn't, but inside I really believed in God. I just did. And to deny that became very hard. And see, the idea of God to me wasn't repulsive. He wasn't a mean, cruel chess player in the sky, didn't care about, he was very arbitrary. He wasn't that. He was a good God to me in my childhood, and my picture of him, my paradigm of him was good. And it was really hard to get rid of that, right? And then the other thing that happened is in my reading and in my studying, I began to look at things and texts and passages and books and documents and everything that pointed to what I believe would have taken me more faith to not believe in God than to believe in God. I just believe that the evidence worked. So, as Guy said, we're going to talk today about a small little topic of, does he exist? Does God exist? And we're going to look at it. And I cannot nor will I try, but I cannot convince you. It's no way I could, you're going to be convinced 100% certainty that God exists. That's not my job to try to do that. I cannot do that. But whether it's in science or history or astronomy or philosophy, I believe that we can have a reasonable confidence in the existence of God. And that the existence of God really is the most probable explanation for all that exists and why, whether it's the universe, it's our planet, it's who I am. So what we're going to do really is just look at the evidence. Follow the breadcrumbs and see where it leads, see where it points out. Can we do that together? That's kind of what I want to do through this whole series, to say, let's just look at it and see where it leads. I want to give you a little modern day example of what it means to follow the evidence. Go ahead and watch this.
5 o'clock after a long day studying. It's what I come home to. Trash has been gone through. It's my fault. I left it, I left it kind of full. So my question is, who did it? Who's the culprit? We got a couple options. Let's see. We got Gib, and we got Vina. What about Tank? I wonder if Tank had anything to do with it. Tank, do you know about the trash?
That's so funny. It wasn't me. So the debate about the existence of God really centers on the question of evidence. See, today we take things like gravity, the world is round. We take these things as easy facts for us, and we believe in them. But not too many years ago, these were theories. This was a hypothesis that had to be proven, and until it could be proven, it wasn't going to be accepted. And so it needed a good, sound argument. There needed to be evidence to these kinds of things. And if we're going to believe in God, I believe that there needs to be a measure of proof. Is there evidence for an all-powerful, supreme being? Modern science and philosophy overwhelmingly say yes. And so that's what we're going to look at. We're going to look at the evidence. And I've got like a 20, 30-minute talk, right? I'm already a quarter into it. And so I'm not going to be able to present everything. What I hope to do is to stir an interest, to pique your interest, that you might begin your own search and your own seeking out on this very important subject. In fact, at the bottom of your outlines, you're going to see a number of resources. We're going to have different resources there every week. These are great books. One of them is like this. It's called The Problem of God, which we're basing this series on. It was the idea behind it. And many others that you can say, you know what, this is of interest to me. I'm fascinated by these things. I want to go and really follow the breadcrumbs and look for the evidence. So here's what I want to do today. I want to introduce to you a few of the reasonable positions of thought from philosophy, from science, from astronomy, for the existence of God, okay? And then we're going to talk a little bit at the end just about what it means to actually have faith. So 18th century philosopher Immanuel Kant, he said this: there are two broad categories that the issue of God's existence must be looked at through. Two broad categories. If you're going to think about the existence of God, these two broad categories got to be in the picture. One is the moral law within, and second is the starry hosts above. These are the two. So this is anthropology and this is cosmology. This is the universe, and then this is humanity. These are the areas that we need to look at. Does God exist? And I believe the evidence of both of these fields helps us realize that it is actually more rational to believe in a supernatural being than to not. So I'm going to look just at three. There's really a dozen arguments from these fields, philosophical arguments, scientific arguments. I'm just going to look at three and just barely scratch the surface, but here's three that we want to look at. And one is the moral argument. The moral argument. This innate sense in us of what is right and wrong. Where did we get this thing? Because it transcends time. It transcends culture. You teach kids to hate. We don't teach them to love. There's something that they know inside of them at a very young age of right and wrong. It's why Sally will say, it's not fair. He got 2 scoops of ice cream and I only got 1. Where did they get that sense of justice from? Or he's been on the trampoline already and I haven't been on the trampoline yet. Whatever that is. She slept in your bed last night and last week, and it's this sense of, wait, that's not fair, or that's not right, or that's not wrong. There's something there inside of us that is not culturally induced, but has been put there. My wife and I were at Trader Joe's last week. And I'm sitting in line, we're standing in line at Trader Joe's. We don't normally sit in line, but I stood in line. Pardon me, So I'm standing in line, we got our basket full of our little goodies, and there's two people in front of us. And this one guy, about my age, and he's right in front of us, and this lady comes with her basket from nowhere, and he looks and he turns around and sees her, and he's like, oh, hey, what are you doing here? They know each other. But he wasn't expecting her. And she says, oh, I just see this and that and everything. And they're talking, give a hug. And then he gets called to go through the line, and she just stays there. She just keeps her basket right there in front of me. And I look at her and I'm going, and I look at Mary and I'm like, she's a woman, you jump on her. She just stood right there. She wouldn't look and make eye contact at me at all. She just stood there with her basket. And she had about 10 years on me or so she's still very young. But I thought, she's still an older lady, just whatever, let it go. But inside of me, there was this sense of what is right and what is wrong, and this is not fair. Where did we get this view of morality and this view of justice or this view of injustice? Christians believe it comes from our Creator. It's not the product of our culture. I understand that your morals and my morals, there's some flexibility there. What might be right for me might be wrong for you, or vice versa. And we know other cultures feel different about different things. But instinctively, there's something threaded through the core of our being that we know to hate another person because of their race is evil. Something tells us that inside. To drop napalm on a village of babies is evil. Sexism is evil. Where does this come from? We believe that God scripted it. It wasn't taught. It's something that is in our hearts. I want to read a passage out of this book from the author, Mark Clark, just on this subject. It says, that's the point of the moral law. We do believe in right and wrong. We believe hurting a child is wrong. We believe raping and pillaging the environment is wrong. We believe all races should be equal, that there is such a thing called justice, that tells us mercy is better than hate, that loyalty is a virtue, and that there is evil in the world. All of these convictions give meaning to our lives. But if there is no absolute right and wrong, then all of them go away. They are but a mirage, meaningless, weightless, worth abandoning with every other construct of modernity. Those are the stakes. A moral law that we have within our heart points to something, evidence of something that has put that there. Here's another argument, not just a moral argument. This is the cosmology argument. This is what we know about the universe, and this is what we know about the stars. Even if you go back to the time of Aristotle or Plato or Aquinas, there was a truth, a concept known as contingency. That very important in scientific study, this thing of contingency, that if something exists, it was contingent upon something else, something that pre-existed it, right? And so it pre-existed this thing, therefore it came into being. It had an existence, a point of origin. I'm in existence, I am a being, but my being is simply contingent upon Dave and Jenny who got together and I was conceived. Right? And so that everything that is in existence, everything that is alive, everything bit of matter or whatever else, had an origin. All right, so whether you're a theist or you're an atheist, scientist, whatever, everybody agrees on that law of contingency. And for years, that was never a problem. The way that scientists or atheists handled this thing was to say, yeah, we believe that, but it doesn't necessitate that a God exists, because the universe is non-contingent. Things came from that. That was the beginning of all things. And so you kind of went, you didn't know quite how to debunk that theory or that hypothesis that they were offering. And there wasn't a lot of data that, Christian community or whatever science had that could say, no, that's not true, until about 90 years ago. 1929, when Edwin Hubble discovered something that was revolutionary. They call it the greatest scientific discovery of the 20th century. And what he did is he took his microscope and his telescope, not a microscope, his telescope, and he pointed it out in space at the observatory, and he was able for the first time to look further than anyone else had ever seen before. And so we're talking in the dark space. And what he saw there revolutionized modern science and astronomy. What he saw there was that the galaxies were actually growing and moving at a far greater rate than anybody had ever imagined. And it wasn't just the galaxies, it was our whole universe was expanding. Space itself was expanding. And this was kind of, because up to this time, people like Einstein and whoever else thought, no, space is static. It's right here. It's controlled. It's this. And as they began to study this whole thing, what they realized, the data proved, is that it was not just random expansion, but it was moving forward, and they were able to conclude through their study that this all started when it was flown, all this matter was flown at a point of origin. Something happened. And they deduced it down to about 15 billion years ago when there was a cosmic explosion that caused this to happen, and it's continued to happen and still is happening to this day. And it points back, again, 15 billion years ago to something that is called that Big Bang. That it happened. So, look, this is what we've been saying all along, that God spoke. You had this is where, science had an agenda that they could not allow a Judeo-Christian thought into science. Oh my gosh, what would that look like? That then it was like, well, it doesn't apply here, contingency. Now we have something from nothing. And it's like, no, back up, wait, no. You can't get something from nothing. So something had to pre-exist matter, because matter was created at that time. What pre-existed matter? Mind. The Bible says that God is spirit. He's not matter. And so, boom, here comes the universe. In the beginning, God. And he created and he spoke. And that's why, again, even I wish we could unpack this thing forever, because it's so interesting and so fascinating that it's not blind faith that we just say, oh, I just believe in God. No. Even if we look at science, this is what modern science looks like today, that there has to be something that created this. We say that something points to the rational conclusion that it would be a divine being who spoke, and it flew out from there, and it's still flowing out from there. Oh, read about this stuff. It's just phenomenal. It's not a lot like the Big Bang Theory on TV, though. I got to warn you, it's not much like that. I want to read this because this is me talking here. But Francis Collins, who the award-winning scientist who mapped out the human genome, he said this: the Big Bang cries out for a divine explanation. It forces the conclusion that nature had a defined beginning. I cannot see how nature could have created itself. Only a supernatural force that is outside of space and time could have done that. That's just following the evidence. So that's the evidence of cosmology. Here's the last one. I'll go real quick. Intelligent design. I mean, think about the unquestionable complexity of our universe, of our bodies. There's so much to get in. You just quickly take a single amoeba, a single cell amoeba. The DNA, which is not just random information, it's data. It's constructed with intelligence. It's good information. It's sensible information. The amount of that DNA and the information in a single cell amoeba would be enough to fill 30 encyclopedias. 30 in just that. I'm going to show you how big an amoeba is, right? It's microscopic. So you take your whole body, you take a plant, you take a tree, living thing, not to mention the universe, the odds, the mathematical probabilities that our universe could even come into an existence, right? And that it could be sustained in perfect alignment with where it is. The probabilities of that just happening accidentally are so astronomical, they can't even qualify it in the realm of the miraculous. It's beyond that. Something like 10 to the 148th power, which is just we can't even really wrap our minds around the impossibilities of that. But that we look at ourselves and who we are in our creation, and the intricacy of ourselves, the design of the human anatomy, of the systems that are at work within us, of our planet, of our solar system, of our galaxies, of the universe, of space itself, all of it, of the stars, all of it. There's just no way. You have to try harder to make a case that there is not intelligent design behind this than the fact to submit to it and just say, why am I scared of following the evidence going, there's got to be a God. There's got to be an intelligent being who created this for us. So, here's where I want to go from here. I want to look at what it means to have faith, because I think there's a misconception. I think the idea of faith is what keeps some people away from saying, I want to go there. I want to be, I want to throw my hat in with this group who believes in God. So I want to give you a couple of common myths about faith as we close, and then tell you a little bit about what faith really is. Here's common myths about faith and doubt. First one, faith equals blind belief and certainty. It's a myth. There's an idea that's perpetuated even in the church that in order to have faith, you have to have absolute certainty. That's just crazy talk. If you have any doubt in your mind, then it's kind of like maybe my walk with God is on shaky ground because I do have some doubts, or I won't get healed, or I'm not going to really succeed in my Christian. I won't ever really know him because I have doubts. Listen, that faith equals certainty is just not true. Everyone has doubts in life. We follow the evidence. We believe. But faith isn't certainty. Actually, what's the opposite of faith? Certainty. Because if you have certainty, you really don't need faith, do you? So here's the next one. Doubt is the opposite of faith. That's the lie. No. If your faith in God means that you have to be certain, then what you're going to do is you're going to learn to ignore certain misgivings inside of you, certain doubts inside of you. And you're going to fail to wrestle with those things and find answers and look for evidence and pray about it or talk to people about these things, because you have to be certain. There's so much in your life that is built upon your certainty that you can't allow for doubts. And this isn't just in the realm of people who think about God in these kind of ways. This is for politics. This is for somebody who is a secularist who's talking to a conservative, and they just have to be right. They only hang around each other. It's a Democrat or a Republican. It's somebody who only can be friends with people who think like them. It's a disease in our culture today, if we haven't noticed. And so even in the Christian realm and in your faith, you've got to give place for doubt so that we can approach conversations with an attitude and a posture to learn, and to hear what people have to say, and to learn from them, and them learn from you, and to go this route. And it's the same with God. That even in our doubts, those are the things that cause us to grow. Because if we don't allow that, we're robbing ourselves of how transformative our walk with God can become. So we've got to allow that. All right, let me wrap it up by giving you what the truth is about faith and doubt. Write this down. Faith is confidence to commit to a course of action because of a reasonable level of trust. That's what faith is. I am confident to commit to a course of action because of a reasonable level of trust. I did this when I started dating my beautiful bride, Mary Nell. That I looked at her life. We dated. I was already, in my 40s. She was in her 40s. We've been through some things in life. And so when her and I started being together, man, I looked at her life. I watched the way she was as a parent. I looked at her values, where she wanted to go, her faith, not what she just said, but I watched her live. And what it did is I became very assured. I became confident to a point where I was ready to ask her to be my wife and to commit to a way of living based upon what I had seen in her life. I had faith to take her into being my wife, right? Not knowing everything and where it would go. It was still faith. For her, it was a much bigger leap of faith to take me. But we still had faith. That's how it is with God. I can't prove to you with all certainty that God is in existence, right? You can't prove to me that he doesn't. But what we can do is look at the evidence. What we can do is look at what is in our hearts and what's crying in our hearts. That there's something inside the human heart, again, transcends culture, that you can see the billions that are crying for some legitimacy, some validation of their existence, that there's got to be some connection to someone higher that did this for a reason. And we're submitting to you, yeah, it's God. You see, every one of you and I, we all have faith. You've put your faith in something, even if it's in Buddha, or you've put it in your stance of atheism, or you've put it in Jesus. We have faith, and because of the faith, that reasonable confidence that we have in that, we have ordered our lives a certain way. And that's what those of us who have believed in Jesus have done. So here's the last one. Because for me, there's enough certainty. There's enough evidence. Not to mention my experience of what I've had for 30 years to go, there's not a chance I want to move away from this course. I would have to deny my reality here. Last one. Doubt is an important step in the faith process. Doubt is an important step in the faith process. And I want you to know that. So if you're here today and you go, I have doubts, join the club. Doubt, it causes you to ask good questions. It causes you to seek things out. If you don't allow it in your life again, you won't. You'll think, I can't become a Christian because I don't have complete certainty. I don't have time to go into it, but when Jesus committed the disciples and commissioned them off, it says they were there in worship and some doubted. The point is that we want our faith to be in front. Doubts can follow. They can be a part. You don't wait till you have everything pictured. I didn't know where our life would go. I didn't know. There's a lot of things. But there's a reasonable amount of evidence that makes us draw a conclusion, so we say yes to that person or yes to that job, and mostly yes to God. And the last thing you want to fill in is the Christian faith at its core is not about believing something. It's about knowing someone. It's about knowing God. That's what our faith is for. It's not so that I can just prove his existence. I mean, I want to look at all that stuff because I'm a rational person, analytical. So nowadays, I am very much that person. I don't believe it just because you say it. So I want to know, show me. And when you look at that, I can conclude, make a rational conclusion that there has to be. There has to be. And so I don't want to stay away from God because I have a bad view of who he might be or what my life's going to look like if I actually submit to him. If I get on board with this, am I going to become a weirdo? If I throw my hat in and really believe and assign myself to that and surrender to this knowledge, this rational conclusion that there is a God, what's that mean for my life? Oh, no, I don't want that. No, that oh, no, I don't want that is only a testament to the fact that you're not seeing who he is clear, because he's anything but weird. The most normal thing in a human experience is that somebody would walk with their Creator. That should be the most normal thing there is. And so just because some have lived that out very abnormally and weird, don't place and transfer that judgment onto he must be that way. No, he's God. We're human beings. It's not a weird thing to believe in a creator. It's not. Just look at modern science. Look at modern philosophy. Look at the great thinkers, even of today, that are not trying to explain it away, but that have just followed the breadcrumbs and said, it's got to be God. And ultimately, I want faith in God so that I can know him, not just about him. So let's pray this morning. God, thank you for the bottom line, whether I can explain it or we can read about it or learn about it or whatever else. You are who you are. You are God. And I'm so grateful that you are constant. You're immutable. You don't change, Lord. And you're very aware of how we are fashioned, that we live in this side of heaven with doubts and perplexities. And so, Lord, I pray that you would help us pull back the veil, so to speak, and help our hearts and our minds to perceive and conceive of the legitimacy of who you are in your plans towards our lives. We look to you. Reveal yourself to us. And through this next 6 weeks, Lord, help us to see you clearer than ever before. And we'll give you all the glory in Jesus' name. Amen.